Hola y bienvenidos a Verbos Reflexivos, parte 2. Now remember that we've been talking about verbos reflexivos lately. And verbos reflexivos is when la persona quien hace la acción también recibe la acción. The person that does the action is also receiving the action, or it's done to oneself. So we've used the verb lavarse. Remember that lavar by itself is just to wash, as in lavo mi perro or ella lava su carro. But when we add the se, it means that we're washing ourselves. One washes oneself. So here are the forms. Yo me lavo, tú te lavas, él, ella, usted se lava, nosotros nos lavamos, vosotros os laváis, y ellos, ellas, ustedes se lavan. And in the list, we've also been practicing some stem changing verbs, or verbos de bota. And remember that they work the same in reflexives. The only thing that is different is the se at the end. So remember, vestirse, to get dressed, is a stem changing verb where the E changes to an I. So the forms are yo me visto, tú te vistes, él, ella, usted se viste, nosotros nos vestimos, vosotros os vestís, y ellos, ellas, ustedes se visten. Repaso, review. Remember that when we conjugate reflexive verbs, we need two things. We need el pronombre reflexivo, the reflexive pronoun, which is the me, te, se, nos, os, se. And we also need el verbo conjugado después del pronombre reflexivo. We need the conjugated verb after the reflexive pronoun. So, now we want to talk a little bit more about verbos reflexivos, more about reflexive verbs. One way that you often hear reflexive verbs used is with impersonal expressions, or expresiones impersonales. So here are some. For example, es importante is an impersonal expression. You're not talking about one person in general or one person specifically doing something, but rather in general. It's important that one brushes one's teeth 2 times a day. Es importante cepillarse los dientes 2 veces al día. Although we don't often speak that way, we just say it's important to brush your teeth 2 times a day. But we're really saying you in general. It's not a personal you. Here's another one. Es bueno acostarse temprano y no tarde. It's good to go to bed early, not late. Es necesario secarse antes de vestirse. It's necessary to dry yourself before getting dressed. So here are 3 impersonal expressions that you will hear. Es importante, es bueno, es necesario. Now notice that you don't need to conjugate the reflexive verb after these expressions. They just stay in the infinitive form. Cepillarse, acostarse, secarse. Now what about when we use 2 verbs in a sentence? Cuando usas 2 verbos, solo necesitas conjugar el primer verbo, no el verbo reflexivo. So when we use 2 verbs, you only need to conjugate the first verb, not the second verb, which would be the reflexive verb in this case. So here's an example. Paco necesita peinarse. Paco needs to brush his hair or comb himself. So notice the necesita is conjugated from necesitar, but peinarse just stays the same. Pero, however, si necesitas cambiar el pronombre reflexivo, depende del sujeto. So yes, you need to change the reflexive pronoun, me, te, se, nos, os, se, depending on the subject, depending on who you're talking about. So here are a couple examples of that. No quiero despertarme a las 6. I don't want to wake up at 6. So quiero is our first verb from querer. Despertarse is the reflexive verb, but since I'm talking about myself, I change the se in despertarse to me. Here's another. Los novios tienen que arreglarse el pelo para la fiesta. The boyfriend and girlfriend have to do their hair for the party. So because los novios is the ellos form, we still use se as our pronombre reflexivo. Here's another. Mi hermana y yo vamos a pintarnos las uñas esta noche. My sister and I are going to paint our nails tonight. So we use nos instead of pintarse. It's pintarnos because we're using the nosotros form, mi hermana y yo. Okay, here's another use for verbos reflexivos, para describir el orden de la rutina. To describe the order of your routine, we use these expressions, antes de y después de. Now, most of you already know después de, which means after. Antes de is before. So here's an example. Yo me ducho antes de cepillarme el pelo. I shower before brushing my hair. Después de levantarse, ellos desayunan. After getting up, they eat breakfast. Antes de maquillarte, te lavas la cara. Before putting on makeup, do you wash your face? So notice, you may notice that we don't change, no cambies los verbos reflexivos que vienen con estas expresiones. Solo los pronombres reflexivos cuando necesario. So just like in the last slide, we don't change this reflexive verb. It's not conjugated. However, we do change this reflexive pronoun. So in our first example, yo me ducho antes de cepillarme el pelo. The me is changed from se because we are talking about in the yo form. Después de levantarse, ellos desayunan. So levantarse is not conjugated, and se stays with the ellos form. Antes de maquillarte, te lavas la cara. The te follows our tu form. You're putting on makeup. Okay, one more. Para describir la función, to describe the function, we use the word, la palabra para, con el verbo reflexivo. Para means in order to or for. So, ¿para qué es el jabón? Yo uso el jabón para lavarme el cuerpo. What is soap for? I use soap for washing my body, or in order to wash my body. Ana necesita la toalla para secarse el pelo. Anna needs the towel to dry her hair. Just like the last two slides, we don't need to change the verbos reflexivos con para. They're not conjugated. However, we do have to change the pronombre reflexivo, as in lavarme. The se in lavarse changes to lavarme to go with our yo form. In this case, since we're talking about Ana, ella form. Secarse keeps the se for the el, ella, usted form. So let's practice these. On your guide, go ahead and see if you can do these on your own. So, complete the sentence. Es necesario. What is it necessary to do? Use one of your reflexive verbs that you have learned. Here's an example. Es necesario lavarse el cuerpo todos los días. It's necessary to wash your body every day. So these are our impersonal expressions. What about when we have dos verbos? I want you to look at these words and put it together in a sentence to mean, are you going to put on your beanie or your hat? We have two verbs here. We have ir, irá, going to, and ponerse, to put on. So how would you put those together? Which verb will you conjugate? What will you do with your reflexive verb? ¿Vas a ponerte el gorro? O tú vas a ponerte el gorro? Remember, the tú is not necessary. You going to put on the hat? So we use the tú form of ir, is vas, a, and then ponerse changes to ponerte, because remember that the reflexive pronoun has to change depending on who is doing the action. What about orden? Write a sentence with this. Estela takes a bath before going to bed. Which verb will you conjugate? Which verb will you not conjugate? Estela se baña antes de acostarse. We change our first verb, and whatever verb comes after the expression antes de or después de stays in the infinitive form and only changes the pronoun se if needed. Last one, la función. El champú es. Give the function. What is shampoo for? El champú es para lavarse el pelo. Well done. So remember your key words for this screencast or your terminología, vocabulario. Es importante, it's important. Es bueno, it's good. Es necesario, it's necessary. Antes de, before. Después de, after. And para, in order to or for. Gracias. Adiós.